Today at shopdap.com, we're going to show you how to put facelift European taillights, LED taillights, on an A3, S3, or RS3. Okay, so we have developed a harness that allows you to plug and play, plug and play to the best of your ability, the European facelift taillights on your car. Now, this is going to be different depending on the model. So we have two harnesses developed. One of them is for the earlier versions of the pre-facelift cars, A3, S3s with the LED taillights. The next version is for the cars that have the dynamic taillights. This would be S3, RS3 cars that have the dynamic taillights on the later versions. This is a plug and play harness, so there's two different versions that we have. Essentially, they function the same way. They plug into the outer taillights, they are adapters, they plug into the inner taillights, and then you do coding, and then you're on your way. So on our A3, here's our before. And here is a facelift RS3 car with the dynamic function. And here is our after with our dynamic amber turn signals. The main difference with these taillights on a facelift car that already has dynamic taillights is going to be the amber turn signals. So most people are going to want to buy these to get the European amber turn signals on their US model. US cars never came with amber turn signals, they only had red dynamic versions. Okay, so what we have laid out here are the two different harnesses. This is going to be the one for the pre-facelift cars, and these are going to be the ones for the facelift cars with dynamic function. Won't look exactly like this. This is a prototype. Main difference you're going to find is going to be some of the adapter connectors here. They're wired obviously a little bit differently, and then you can see the inner connectors because they use different inner connectors. That's going to be the main functionality difference between the two. So on facelift cars, there's one thing you have to modify. And if we take a close look here, this tab on this connector will actually have to be removed on the factory gray one that adapts to this side of this connector. So you have to, it will stop it from plugging in, so you just have to shave it off with a razor blade. It's super easy to do. Essentially, the problem that you run into is you can see as you slide this in, those two tabs are aligned. One of the tabs on the gray connector that's on your car from the factory, if you have a facelift car, needs to be removed, and it just prevents it from plugging in like that. All you do is take a razor blade, and you can kind of just like work it back and forth like so. But you're just gonna cut it off just like that, and it just breaks right off. You haven't done anything to your factory harness or anything like that. No modifications, just shave that off, then it'll allow it to plug right in. Like that. So to start with our install, we've opened our trunk and we're going to remove this trunk trim. So all you need to do that is take a pick. This is like a 45 that we have here. If you don't have picks, we can link to them or you can purchase them. And you kind of stick it behind and then pop it out. You'll get this front seam of it out, and you can pop it down in the bottom as well. Like that. And then all you're doing is you're going to pry it out and then towards the rear of the vehicle. So it kind of rolls around like that. And you can see these hooks kind of lock in like so, and you just got to pull it around like that. Now we have two Torx screws here, which are pretty simple to remove. So 1, 2. Now we're ready to remove our taillight. Now you can see that this is hanging out here, but we have other parts that mount it on the inside here. All we have on our light holding it in are these two nubs right here that stick into grommets in the body of the car over here. So what we're going to be doing is pulling back on that. Now you can use something like a bone tool to actually pry from the body, but what I actually seems to be best is instead of prying, is you grab the light like this and you kind of rock it up and down like that. And you kind of pull backwards while you're rocking it, to kind of rock it out of the grommets like so. Now, the taillight connector right here, we push down on this tab and then pull back. My hand's gonna block it when I start to push it, but you can push down the tab, you can hear it kind of release there, slides out. Yours probably isn't gonna come out that easy because I've taken this off before, which is why it came off like that. Now, these two adapter harnesses actually mounted in place, but you only need one of them and it doesn't matter which side, so just one is fine. All we're gonna do is plug that in like so. Then all we do is plug it back into our taillight, and we're gonna kind of feed this wiring down. Just feed it down so it's out of the way. You can put your taillight back in place. All I'm gonna do is push back on this to get it mounted into those nubs. You can hear it kind of pop in place, and then we're gonna put those screws in. So now is the time where you would want to install your trim piece, except this trim piece is useless. Because you have facelift taillights, you will not be able to use those trims on these lights. Trust me, I tried for a little while, it didn't work. So you can purchase new ones, or you could leave it without. Aesthetically, obviously it's not particularly attractive. It would look better if you had trim pieces. We will link to them in the description where you can purchase them if you have a pre-facelift car like this one, so you can install those if your heart so desires. If you have a facelift car, you should be able to just reinstall your trim piece, which is done like so. You rotate it in like this, you hook it in place, you snap it down. Okay, so now you do the same process for this side. I'm not gonna show you because frankly it's too simple to have to worry about. And then we're gonna go to this side. Okay, so now we're going to install this. This is gonna go between the two taillights here, and we have to remove this trim panel to actually get this off. So let's start with taking that trim panel off. Okay, so we're gonna start by removing this trim piece. This slides off, and you can kind of wiggle it back and forth and slide it off your trunk latch. Next, we're gonna be removing these two pieces here. These just pry off, and these are fairly simple. There's gonna be tabs that kind of, 4 points here, 2 here, and 2 here, and you can kind of just pop them up. And you're gonna kind of work around it. You should be able to just pop it up like that. And if you take a look close at what holds it on here, that tab right here latches in right underneath here and there. You can see these slots that kind of notches it in. And do the same thing over here. Then we're gonna take out this Phillips screw here, and you can see it's right by this handle here. Lastly, we have this plastic rivet to remove, and it should be able to remove this trim piece. So to take that off, we can kind of push it in like so, and then it will allow us to pry it out like that. Okay, so this is what you saw. It was like this when we removed it. When it was installed, it was like this. Now keep in mind, when you push this in, if you push it in too far, it will allow this piece the other piece to fall out. And you don't really want that to happen because it could disappear, and then you have to buy a new one of these, which we'll link to, just in case you do. Now I just take our trim piece off and do the same thing on the other side. So we're gonna pop this open, and this is the access port for these taillights. Now we're just gonna slide it back like this. It kind of hangs like that. And I'm doing this really so that we have somewhere to grab when we pull. We are now at the point in the install where you're just gonna be yanking stuff, and most of these trim panels tend to require you to yank a little bit harder than what feels like would be normal to get the clips to pop out. So we're gonna show you what that looks like on this one. And then again, same thing over here. Pop that out. And we're off. Okay, now this one you can see is missing, and it's because it's still in the trunk. So you can see what it looks like over here. You'll just look through all your clips and see if they're still there. Some of them are gonna be missing, and some are gonna be left into the body of the car, which we gotta remove. Now to remove these things, you're gonna want some needle nose pliers, and you should be able to get underneath both of the tabs, kind of squeeze, and then pull it out. There you go. Okay, so now we're gonna remove our taillight, and to do that, all we have to do is pop this trim down. Now, I've had this trim off before, so this is gonna be pretty easy for us to do. For you, it won't be easy because it sucked the first time I did this. So all you're gonna do is take a pry tool or something like that and kind of work it down, and you can see it kind of pops straight down, and you're gonna kind of work it down from here to there. You're gonna want maybe like a pick like this to just pull straight down, or a trim tool like this, and you can kind of wedge it in the back side to help you push back here. And so it comes, as you can see, straight down there, and unfortunately it kind of rocks back and forth, and you can see these are the trim pieces that hook on, right there. Okay, so now we're inside the taillight. We're gonna pull this red tab back like that, and then we're gonna push down and pull the connector out. Then we have our 8mm that hold the taillights in. Just take them out like, try not to lose them. Now we're ready to remove our taillight, and to do that, it's pretty simple. You just gotta wiggle it out. Now, these studs seem like they tend to bind on the body, so you do have to kind of wiggle them past there, and these studs will kind of get hung up on these holes as you're coming out, so you gotta kind of wiggle it back and forth to get it out. If you're a very anal retentive person, you're gonna wanna clean this hole, because as you can see, it's got some schmutz in it. You can take a look here. I'm very proud of my work, and we're ready to reinstall the new taillight, which again will hang up a little bit on those studs, and you kind of got to wiggle it in place, pop it in, and you're good. Now we're going to install these nuts and tighten them down, and we're going to remove and install the new taillight on the other side, and then we'll get back with the harness. Now on pre-facelift cars, you will need to remove a tab off this brown connector, which is on the inner taillight. So I've already removed it on this car, but what you would do is take a razor blade and kind of shave it down. What I like to do is kind of get it on there and then kind of rock it back and forth until it shaves off. And as you can see, it's off there super cleanly, and you could barely even tell there was anything there in the first place when you look at the connector, and it plugs right in. Okay, so now we're gonna install our taillight harness. Now these are side specific, so what you're gonna do is take the one with the 2 blue wires and put it on the passenger side of the car. And you're gonna take the one with the 2 green wires right here, and we're gonna put that on the driver's side. We're gonna install them, and then we're gonna show you the rest. Now to install our harness, all we're gonna do is plug it into our taillight like this, and then as long as you've removed the tab off of this one, it should plug in very easily like so. And then you can push that locking tab in. And you can do the same thing on the other side. Just plug them both in, and then we'll clean up our wiring. At this point, we're gonna do our coating and test our taillights, because before we reinstall anything, we want to make sure everything works properly. So let's go do it. Remember this taillight trim? This also doesn't fit if you have a pre-facelift car. They should swap over if you have a facelift car, but on these, they don't fit exactly correct, and so they won't go in deep enough. So we will also link to those in the description where you can get those if you do want to ensure you have all those proper trim pieces. Okay, so we're gonna be using OBDeleven to code this. This is a dongle device. We'll link to it in the description. You also can use VAGCOM to do this, but I can tell you it's going to be much more difficult with VAGCOM, and we're about to show you why. So we're just gonna plug this dongle underneath our car into the OBD2 port, which is underneath here, and then get it connected. Now, before we get into our coding, I do wanna mention the coding we're doing here is specific to the pre-facelift cars. If you have a facelift car and you purchase these taillights with our harness, it's going to include instructions. They're gonna be very similar to what we're about to show you in terms of how it's done, but the specifics of the coding is not going to be the same. So make sure you're not following along with this coding if you have a facelift car, and if you do, you can follow along. But again, the instructions are going to be included with your taillights and your harness for the accurate coding for your specific car. Okay, so when we get into our OBDeleven, we're going to go in and go down to our central electrics. Okay, so when we get into central electrics, we're going to go down to security access. This allows us to actually perform the coding. 31347 is generally the code that we expect from most MQB cars. And then we're gonna go to adaptation. Now, on this particular A3, it's way down. I've done some other cars, RS3s and other stuff that I've seen for testing and development that were not this long of a list. Okay, so all of our stuff's gonna include all the coding instructions you're gonna need, but the main difference you're gonna see here is each channel, when you go into it, every channel has all of the different functions in one place. So anything that happens on this channel, which would be Leutcha 16 or Light 16, is going to be here. There's all these different functions. In VAGCOM, it looks like this. Okay, so we're in VAGCOM here. The guys at our shop use VAGCOM for most of the diagnosis work they do. For professionals, it's probably the go-to product. For this particular thing, the user interface and the way this is displayed makes this particular problem or this particular job a little bit more of a problem. I can tell you that 99.9% of our taillight mistakes or problems that people have around taillight things come from coding mistakes because they're using VAGCOM and they get easily turned around. So if you take a look here, here is your list of every channel you're coding. Now, if you take a look at the previous thing that we showed with OBDeleven, each one of these things here, you can see EF20. All of the things on channel 20 were in one place. In VAGCOM 20, only this one channel for function EF20 is here. And then to go to the next one, you got to scroll down to get to the next 20. So what inevitably happens when people are coding things, they get turned around. So you can see GH20 is there, and if you find the next 20. So when you're changing multiple things, you can get really turned around, and this gets really confusing really fast. And again, almost all of the issues we have around taillight coding come from mistakes in VAGCOM. Okay, so as we proceed with our coding, we have some basic versions of our instructions. Our instructions will look a little bit better than these, but we're gonna start with our coding, and we're gonna go to channel 16, and we're gonna go to A16, which you can take a look here. The original coding is Bremslicht, and we're gonna turn that off, nicht active. And one additional thing we're gonna do in channel 16, all the way at the bottom here, we're gonna go to H16, and we're gonna change that to not active. And then we're gonna go into 17, all the way to the bottom again, H17, change that to not active. And we're gonna also go to A17 and turn that one off as well. Next we're going to 18, and we're going to A18, and we're changing A18 from Bremslicht to Blinken-Links Heliphase. And you perform that adaptation, good. Go back, go to 19, go to A19, and we're changing that to not active, A19, from Bremslicht to not active. And just keep in mind, our coding has the old and new channel related to it. And we will, in addition, ask OBDeleven to create a one-touch app. It does require credits from that you have to pay to them for using it, but it will give you the ability to do one-touch version of this coding where you don't have to actually go through the manual versions. Now we're going to channel 20, and we're going to B20, and we're going to change that from Blinken-Links Heliphase to not active. We're going to go to G20 and Blinken-Links Dunkelphase to not active and do that coding. And we're going to go to channel B21, and that's in Leutche 21, and we're changing from Blinken-Recht Heliphase to not active. And we'll go back to bottom, which is G21, Blinken-Recht Heliphase, not active. As you can see, if you were doing this in VAGCOM, all these changes, it's super easy to make a mistake as to which one you have or have not done yet, and which channel you're on, because if you click one thing wrong, you may have changed the wrong channel, and then you don't know what channel you changed to fix your mistake. And because knowing if you change the channel correctly requires you to go click through every single channel and know what the previous channel was, it's a challenging way to code. And then we're going to go down to 27, and we're going to go to A27 and change that channel from a word that I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce to a word that I shouldn't pronounce. Well, they're right next to each other there. And then we're going to go to A28 and change A28 to Clemmy 30G. And then we're going to change 28 from B to 0. And the last one we're going to go to is 28, and we're going to change this Fellehort Mittlers Byte DTC from 31 to 0, and we're going to do that. We're changing 29 which is an A29 from Rookfarlicht to this one, Standelicht Algemeen, you know what I'm saying. If you do have any functionality problems after testing, you are going to want to make sure that you, A, double check your wiring to make sure that you have it in the correct place, and then B, double check all the coding channels to make sure they are properly coded. We are going to obviously take a look at any of that stuff if you did have a problem, but those are going to be the kind of the bare minimum, and then we would have to figure out if your car is in some way different than every other car we've tested. One important note when you're running these wires, right here where it meets this point on the passenger side, this one, and on the driver side, the bottom side here, need to make sure that you run with the wiring here, because when we look at our trim panel, you can see there's a cutout here on this one and over here on this one. Otherwise, you're gonna have a hard time getting them through this panel. So we should be able to push this up and take a look that those wiring spots should allow us to take this piece and sit it over top, and you can see they can clear right underneath here. And as you can see, we've zip tied along the way in a bunch of spots to make sure that our wiring stays all along. And again, this is the key point right here. And to reinstall, again, you want to make sure you remove these, slide these in place into your panel, make sure they're all in the correct place, and then feed these harnesses up into the hole. Open these up from the bottom and kind of pull everything through, make sure everything sits in place properly. When you get to this point, the most important part is, what I like to do is take all your metal clips, and if you take a look up here, you can see you have the slot in the body of the car, and then you have your metal tab. So what I like to do, and we're gonna kind of block you, is you kind of sit them all, make sure they're all kind of sitting where they're supposed to, and we're not right now. And you have to kind of look around through all of them as you go and make sure they're sitting in the correct place. If they're not, then you need to kind of work the trim panel to get them into that place. Now, usually what you can do is kind of get them sat down like that, and I had to kind of push back to get them back. And then once they're all sitting in place, you can just hit it and knock them in place. Don't start banging this thing until you have them sitting though in the right spot, otherwise you're gonna break something. And now you've installed European taillights on your A3, S3, or RS3. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more like it. Again, links to all the parts for this in the description below. And here are some beauty shots.